Thanks, Bronwyn. It's great to be here. And if I'd known that going short would get us onto the mini golf course, I would have just prepared copies to distribute and sat down now, which would have got me out of questions as well. Can I start, of course, by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered this afternoon, the Whadjuk people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. There are lots of people in this room who I'd also like to acknowledge. Councillor Kevin Bailey, the Mayor of the City of Swan, Glenn Docherty, the Chair of the NGAA. Glenn, it's great to be with you here today. The Deputy Chair, Mayor Tracy Roberts, great to catch up with you earlier as well. Ruth Butterfield, Mayor of the City of Armidale, Matthew Death, the Mayor of Wollondilly, Councillors Alessi, Cox, Diaz, Israel, Majlik, Sabere and Smith, and any other councillors I've failed to mention, my apologies. Bronwyn Clark, of course, who does such a great job in making the NGAA run so smoothly, and of course the City of Swan more broadly as the conference host. It really is wonderful to join all of you here in Perth on Remembrance Day and to carry on a conversation that I've been having with the NGAA ever since I was first elected. It does mean a lot to me that this organisation is based in the city of Whittlesea in the electorate of Scullin, and that my great mate, Councillor Sam Alessi, was your very first spokesperson. And friends, I guess what I'd like to start with is by recognising that there is no greater trend in the world today than urbanisation. By 2050, 3/4 of the world's population are expected to live in cities. Australia is well ahead of this trend. 2/3 of our population live in a capital city, 40% in our two biggest cities. And of course, living in cities presents enormous opportunities in terms of jobs, education and lifestyle. But many of our cities are feeling the pressure of this rapid urbanisation. This is dividing our cities, too often, into prosperous cores and outer suburbs that don't share opportunity and amenity. Urban sprawl, congested roads, overcrowded public transport, lack of access to childcare and schools, not to mention the concentration of jobs opportunities in the inner suburbs. These are just a few of the issues experienced every day by people living in Australia's cities, especially in rapidly growing outer suburbs, the places represented by the people in this room. Cities policy can't be about central business districts in isolation. It's also got to be about our suburbs and fundamentally about the people who live in them. 1 in 5 Australians live in the outer suburbs of our cities and they are not getting the attention they deserve from policymakers. Today, this matters more than ever because of population growth and also because of the challenges of spatial income segregation, the geographic concentration of households with similar incomes, which has shaped how people live their lives within our cities and how our cities are functioning, according to the OECD's Divided Cities report released last year. Australia is probably the world's most urbanised nation, but definitely the most suburban. Labor gets this. Back in the early 70s, Gough Whitlam and Tommy Wren made urban policy a national priority by establishing the National Sewage Program that connected thousands of Australian homes, suburban homes, to sewers for the first time. And as Whitlam stated in 1972, practically every national problem relates to cities. A national government which cuts itself off from responsibility for the nation's cities is cutting itself off from the nation's real life. A national government which has nothing to say about cities has nothing relevant or enduring to say about this nation or the nation's future. I think that's equally true today. Whitlam and Uren took responsibility for assuring that people building homes and lives on the fringes of our big cities would never be second-class citizens. But Tony Abbott rejected this in 2013, and we all continue to pay the price for it now. Tony Abbott denied the reality of 2000 suburban Australia, and he may well feel like a king in his car, but the truth is that Australians are spending more and more time on the roads, stuck in congestion. Now, after grudgingly recognising that cities exist, and after 5 ministers in 4 years, we still see the needs and aspirations of the millions of Australians living in our fast-growing outer suburbs, peripheral at best or neglected at worst under the Morrison government. This may well be why he's so keen on talking about quiet Australians. But we can't afford to stay quiet about a policy approach that's holding back communities and with this, people's lives. That is building cynicism through a nakedly political focus on projects rather than looking to place-based need. That is top-down when it needs to be bottom-up, as the NGAA has made abundantly clear, to me at least. And so Labor is committed to turning this around. Under Labor, the state of our cities will always be a national priority, as it was under Whitlam and Uren, through the extraordinary contributions of Brian Howe and more recently Anthony Albanese. Now, as I'm sure many of you know, my predecessor in this portfolio is the now Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese, and this is a hard act to follow, I'm not going to lie. When Labor was last in government, we established foundations for important collaboration and alignment. We created the Major Cities Unit and the Urban Policy Forum to ensure our policy was informed by expert opinion and underpinned by an evidence base, including through the annual State of Australian Cities report. This was supplemented by the Housing Supply Council. All of this, of course, abolished on the election of Tony Abbott. Labor established the the Australian Council of Local Government to bring local councils into this conversation, and created the Centre of Excellence for Local Government at UTS to promote best practice. Through COAG, we conducted a review of capital city strategic planning systems, chaired by former Deputy Prime Minister Brian Howe, with Lucy Turnbull as Deputy Chair. Anthony Albanese also released Australia's first ever comprehensive national urban policy, which identified the 3 pillars of productivity, sustainability and livability. The original Cities Partnerships project was designed to build on this approach, bringing together all 3 levels of government through genuine collaboration, as well as with the private sector, to set out a strategic vision for all of our cities. And even in opposition, Labor still led on this issue, working with stakeholders to identify concerns and priorities. Anthony Albanese also recognised the promise of the 30-minute city, a critical question when it comes to meeting the needs of people in our suburbs. Today I am pleased to acknowledge that there is a measure of bipartisanship on the need for federal government engagement in our cities after the neglect under Tony Abbott. However, I believe the current City Deal program falls well short of what is required to deliver real change. I understand you have questions about the City Deals program, both in terms of the government's approach, but also in terms of what Labor's thinking is heading on this issue. My view is that when done right, City Deals do have something to offer, to overcome fragmented governance arrangements in delivery of shared and clearly articulated goals. A partnership where all 3 levels of government work with the private sector and communities to deliver genuine structural change. My concern, however, is that this government has used this as a distraction from their failure to provide real investment in our nation's cities. Some of the deals are good deals, and I'll say so when I see it. For instance, the Launceston deal is a good deal, as it is driving progress towards clearly defined and shared objectives. However, the fact is the majority of these city deals don't meet this standard, either in the selection of the region or in the deal itself. Labor supports greater investment in our cities. We don't support political fixes, and we don't think city deals should just be a mechanism to fund projects the Commonwealth was going to fund anyway. Australia's cities are, of course, in a rapid state of change. So how do we respond to this rapid change? There's a unique opportunity for local governments, policymakers, industry to make a difference and ensure the livability of Australia's cities and suburbs is enhanced for future generations. So people don't think that moving away from big cities is the only way to have a good quality of life. We need to make sure that development in our inner and outer suburbs reflect an understanding of how people live. What does this mean? It means ensuring new housing developments have access to amenities like public transport so that people can get to work, as well as parks and shopping and sporting facilities. It means development that's properly considered the impact of more development on local roads networks. It means really understanding the urban and suburban economy of today and imagining that of tomorrow, realising 30-minute cities. It means 3 levels of government working together and collaborating with the private sector and community. Today I've talked a bit about Labor's record when it comes to the suburbs, the places all of us represent, and in particular the record of our leader. The challenge of winning the hearts and minds of voters in the suburbs, especially younger people seeking to build their lives in growing communities, has been well articulated by Anthony Albanese and identified by the authors of our election review as a central, pressing political question for Labor. But we're mindful that this political dimension is only part of the story and that its resolution requires policy innovation and collaboration. Simply put, people need a greater say in shaping the places in which they live. I've also talked about the present government. Both of these things matter. I believe that in Labor we have set out a useful framework to continue the shape of our approach to national urban policy. and I trust my critique of the Morrison government isn't just seen as point scoring. What I'm interested in is pointing to how we might do better for the millions of Australians who are entitled to expect so much better. I'm not here to announce the detailed policies for the 2022 election. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. But I can say this. These policies will build on a strong record, a deep understanding and a deeper commitment to our growing suburbs. And they will be the product of listening, in particular to the voices in this room and to all the people that you represent so well. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead.
Any questions? No?
The mini golf obviously is pretty appealing.
Look, okay, one turn back. Sid, I think our microphone runner is so that's okay?
That's all right. My name's Sid, I'm from Casey. You mentioned in your speech around how city partnership would be about more than just funding projects which have already been funded. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a bit more as to whether a city partnership or a city deal under a future Labor government would include a greater variety of projects in terms of new funding, or were you referring to additional policy instruments?
Yeah, look, I think conceptually how we think of, or how I like to think of city deals is in terms of governance, not particular projects. I think that's really what the history of them in the UK tells us, and that's really what we started to talk about when Anthony in government started to consider its application to Australia. I think what we're all conscious of, local government representatives in this room, those of us in the federal arena and even our state brothers and sisters, is that we have shared responsibilities, but often not the mechanisms to make them work together. And fundamentally what I see city deals doing is overcoming fragmented governance in pursuit of shared objectives. I think where that has happened, and you look at the trademark UK examples, Manchester in particular, that's been what's happened. I think the deals that aren't likely to work are those that are structured around a particular project and which seek to put some add-ons around it. So for me, this is why I'm always going to emphasise the bottom-up bit. In Canberra, we shouldn't be seeking to tell local communities what they need. We should be listening to local communities about what matters to them and seeking if we can find common ground around funding and use of other federal instruments to shape the destiny of those communities. Often that will be about an infrastructure solution, a hard infrastructure solution, a road, a railway, a convention centre. But I think it stifles our capacity to do the sort of place-based work that you've been talking about today, to solely look at this as another way of rebadging infrastructure projects. But I hope we get the chance to carry on this conversation. I hope in particular that the policy that we take around city partnerships or city deals to the next election is deeply informed by the experience of the people in this room, particularly those I know in Western Sydney who'll have a bit to say about the evolution of that arrangement.
Thank you. Any other questions? No?
My friends from Whittlesea have gone quiet. Thank you very much, everyone.
We're being very gentle on your first visit, so make sure you'll come back.
It's great to be here. I'll tell Anthony that I did so much better than he ever did. That's a joke because I can see this is being recorded. Anthony, I would never... Thanks very much, everyone.